Good evening and welcome to the 1440th regular board meeting held on February 24th for tonight. I wanted to let you know that we have a translator for anyone who needs to have translation services, and Paula Valbuena.
Buenas noches, las personas que necesiten interpretación al español, por favor acérquense aquí a la mesa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. This meeting is being videotaped and recorded, and you can view the video of this meeting or past meetings on our website. And in closed session, the board did not take any action. Please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. We are pleased to welcome students from Robertson Road Elementary School, well, a student from Robertson Road Elementary School, to lead us in the flag salute tonight. Fatima Navarro, third grader. Fatima is an exceptional student, earning high scores on her report cards. She is involved with the ASES cheer program and winter show. Fatima enjoys dancing, reading, and art. She is always the first to volunteer and is a wonderful peer support to students. Following graduation, she would like to attend law school and become an attorney. Thank you. And now, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I would like to call your attention to the fact that if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. Only those who have submitted cards will be called upon to speak, and no cards will be accepted after the period has begun. Every person who wishes to address the board must fill out a card, and you will find the cards in the lobby. And that brings us to our announcement. Superintendent Noguchi.
Wonderful. Thank you, President Marks. First off, welcome and thank everyone out for coming out this evening. Again, it's always great to see so many faces out in the audience. I'm just going to take a minute and congratulate the Grigori Mock Trial team for winning the 2020 Stanislaus County Mock Trials. This is a wonderful award.
Hey.
This team was comprised of 5 students and was led by teacher Daniel Moreno and volunteer attorney coach Aurora Throm. The Grigori team will compete at the state level this next month from March 20th to the 22nd. So we're very excited to have Modesto being represented at the state level, and we will be back sharing their accomplishments in a month or so. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Report of meetings attended by Board of Education members. Do I have any lights? I see Mr. Irvin. Trustee Irvin.
Yes, I got a chance to attend a few excellent and programs going around in our district. One was the Enoch's High School STEM rally, science and technology, engineering, actually STEAM, with arts in there that comprise all the district schools who are participating in those STEAM type projects. It was standing room only in there, and the teachers and administrators did a wonderful job of displaying what we are doing in the area of computer science and STEAM education. So it was wonderful to go there. Also with my colleague, fellow board member, Chad, over to Roosevelt for their STEM program that they did with the junior high school students, and get to see the future city, Lego displays with using engineering technology to build projects and things like that in future cities with energy efficient cities, and competing in the Future Cities project as well. And also back over to Enox for the forensic biotech program that they had over there, featuring Fun with Science that the students at the forensic biotech over at Enox hosted for the community. And you found students from all over Modesto City Schools, Sylvan Schools, Stanislaus Schools participate in that Fun with Science, and got a chance to indulge myself as well in some of the science experiments and things like that. So it was really good to see what we're doing, not only for our district, within the district, but for the community, and exposing our students and future students to science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Right. Thank you, Trustee Irvin. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, just to piggyback on the Roosevelt STEM evening that Trustee Irvin and I were able to visit, I was extremely impressed by the presentation level of the students, and to see how effectively they are learning to communicate in a setting where they have to make presentations. So to see that happen at the junior high school level, and to see how well these kids are doing in these STEAM projects, I can't wait to see what they're going to be able to accomplish when they get to high school. And it's a great challenge for us to make sure we've got programs that are ready to take them where they are and move them further forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. Trustee Lopez?
Yes, real quick, I just want to mention that I attended the planning meeting for the Safe Routes to Schools California Walks assessment at Shackelford. We had a great group from both community, parents, and staff in the room. They got to go out and do a walk around the area. I had to return to work, but it was a great workshop, and we're hoping to gather more support and more input from business leaders in San Modesto, the clergy around there. So anyone that might be interested, I know that definitely district will have more information. And I'm trying to look here the exact date on the next meeting that we're having with Shackelford and Marshall, but I think I can give that information on a later date. But it's great work that we're doing. So it was very excited to be there.
Thank you. I don't see any more lights, so that moves us to our recognitions, and we will hear from our Public Information Officer, Krista Noonan.
Yes, good evening, board, and good evening, everyone in the public. So I'm proud tonight to start with our special recognitions, which is actually a recognition of National School Counseling Week. Technically, it already took place, so it was the beginning of February. It was February 3rd through the 7th, but I think anyone who are counselors would agree is that that's an everyday job. That's not just a one week thing, and I think it's really important to express our appreciation for our counseling staff across all of the schools. So tonight we have a few people here who are going to speak, but we also have, as part of the board agenda, we have a resolution which also talks to the National School Counseling Week and the importance of school counselors in helping not only students but also parents realize their students' full potential. So I'd like to invite up, I'm going to introduce, and then they can, sorry, there's a little bug that's wanting to land. They're going to come up to the side to speak. So I have Danielle Hinkle, who is the Modesto City Schools Senior Director of Student Support Services. And then I have two different school counselors, one who represents the junior high population and then the other who represents the high school population. So I have Yolanda Molina, who is a counselor for grades 7 and 8 at Mark Twain Junior High, and then Melanie Hildebrandt, who is a college counselor from Johansson. So they're going to come up right here on the side and speak. Sure. We have a microphone ready for you, Danielle.
All right. Good evening, everyone. First off, I'm Danielle Hinkle, Senior Director, Student Support Services. And as Krista mentioned, I am here this evening to help honor the hard work of all of our school counselors and our college counselors. And as Krista mentioned, this is in recognition of National School Counselor Week, which occurred earlier this month. But as mentioned, this is an all day, every day, even into the nighttime and weekends position for these ladies and all of the other counselors in our district. Counselors play an important role helping students to examine and refine their talents, strengths, abilities, and interests. They work in professional partnerships with teachers, families, other school staff, and community agencies to support students in realizing their full potential. As all educators focus their efforts on improving academic achievement for students, it's important that we recognize our school counselors for their continuing efforts in reducing barriers to learning and in providing the support necessary for all students to achieve at the highest level. So I'm going to turn it over first to Yolanda to say a few words.
Okay, good evening again. My name is Yolanda Molina, and I am here representing Mark Twain, but also I'd like my junior high counselors to stand up and recognize them because they're here and they're my amazing team. So, and the high school counselors as well, but we work very closely and collaborate with our junior high. And so when I was asked to speak tonight, I really didn't write anything, but the most rewarding aspect of my role as a counselor is to see the transformation of our students, whether we're meeting with them socially or emotionally, and they just sit across from me, and I'm just listening, and I just hear them breathing and just sighing. And to me, when they leave with a smile, that's the most rewarding aspect of my job. And academically, just seeing their growth from when they start in 7th grade, and they're lost and they don't really know where they're going, what they're doing, but they have a goal. And so seeing that transformation from 7th to 8th grade, and then seeing them at walking that stage at the end of their 8th grade year, it's just, I can't even explain that emotion, but it's an amazing and the most rewarding job, and well, not the most, but I quite enjoy it. And then also supporting our families, because they don't know. And so coming in when they come to see us and they really don't know how to support their child or what information they need in order to help them be successful, and being that middle person between the teachers and our admin and then their families, it's amazing to have be in a position or in a role where we're able to support not only our students but then also our families and staff and everybody that comes through our door to ask for guidance and support. So it's an amazing job. I enjoy it every day.
Good evening. Good evening, board members, Dr. Noguchi, everyone here. I would like to recognize my fellow high school counselors, if you would all stand up. We often feel that it can feel like a thankless job, but it's really not. We do get thanked every day. It's different every day. The way we are thanked or what we go through every day is very different, but it is really not thankless. We are really, truly blessed. Thank you so much for having us counselors here this evening to recognize what we do in helping the students of this district. I've been in this district for 30 years, my first 4 as a student, and the last 26 as an educator and a counselor. I have seen this district go through massive changes during 3 decades. I would have to say that one of the best was the creation of the college counseling position. From the time I was little, I knew I was going to college. My mom told me I was. At 5 years old, I had no clue what that meant. I also didn't know at that time that my mom herself was not a college graduate. I just knew that it was part of my future. As a graduate of Modesto City Schools prior to the college counselor, I remember my mom photocopying multiple photocopies of the UC application packet, writing, rewriting, and rewriting my application. I remember going to the post office, getting a receipt of mailing when on November 28th, I finally submitted that application. How I wish I had had a college counselor to guide me through that. Things have changed and continue to change at a rapid fire pace in the world of college admissions. To have the sheer privilege of working with the young lives that I do on a daily basis continues to reaffirm the necessity of not just my counseling position, but the junior high through the high school counseling positions. Daily, we talk with young people about their lives, their interests, their futures. We help them not only see the positives of planning for their futures, but how to get there. I remind them that there is no one right way to get to their goal, but that all paths lead through some form of training and education. I get to walk with them step by step, 9th through 12th grade, as they figure out who they are and what their passions are. I love the fact that I get to share in their joys and encourage them through their disappointments. There are 7 college counselors and a lot more academic counselors across this district. Each site has their challenges with the students and families that we serve, but we are all passionate as we help students learn and discover their futures. I heard a young mom say the other day about raising her young children that the days are long, but the years fly by. Nothing could be more true of college counseling and counseling in general in Modesto City Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to do a quick photo. So if I could have the other counselors in the back of the room quickly come up to the front for a photo opportunity.
We also have Trustee West and then Dr. Noguchi, if you'd like to join as well.
While we're waiting, I just want to say this. Recognition has a special place in my heart because I'm a retired school counselor. And Melanie happened to be one of my students when she was studying to become a counselor, and I'm super proud of her. And I want to thank everyone for what they've done. Of course, thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So next up, we have our character education recognition. And tonight we have Johansson Senior Olivia Bob, who's being recognized for the character trait of compassion. And Johansson teacher Valerie Yoder is here to tell us all about Olivia.
All right. I've had the privilege of knowing Olivia for 3.5 years now, and it's been wonderful to get to know her. I feel like I've been blessed because I've gotten to know her. But I first started to see Olivia's compassion last year when she became a PAL in my class, Pura Vida, which is designed to help students with autism spectrum disorder learn the social skills that they need. Throughout the year, she modeled the appropriate behavior and she worked with the students, but she especially shined with working with one of my most challenging students. And every day she encouraged him to join an activity, modeled excellent conversation skills, and helped him to deal with the disappointment of losing a game. This year, she joined the Link Crew, which is a group of upperclassmen dedicated to making the difference in the lives of young students, especially freshmen. It's a big responsibility. It requires a lot of patience and a positive mindset, both of which Olivia has an abundance of. Olivia is also part of BSU, and this year she was helping with the blanket drive, which is helping those with less fortunate, and she was collecting blankets, coats, and beanies and socks. I just truly admire the genuine concern she has for others, which is why I nominated her for compassion. You're welcome.
And we have President Marks and Dr. Noguchi who will come take photos as well. right, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have our MCS Heroes Award. For tonight, we have Myra Cisneros, who's a campus assistant from Burbank Elementary. She is our MCS hero, and she's been nominated by Burbank teacher Tom Arnold, who's going to tell us all about her.
All right, I get choked up, so if I start crying, just ignore it. That's that Polish in me. Anyways, I'm Tom. I'm a teacher at Burbank Elementary. So I'll look down. I know. You can't do your job without them. Mother hen, where's Panu? Come here. She's a principal. She should be doing this, not this sap up here. Anyways, her kid moved on. She stayed. PTA.
You're doing great.
All right. Well, Myra definitely is such a huge asset to Burbank, and we could not do many of the things without her. And like he said, not only is she an outstanding employee, but she works tirelessly, even though she doesn't have a student at Burbank anymore. And so we are just so proud to have her every day and seeing her smiling face and just lighting up the girl. Look at what you're making me do. It's just an honor to have to work with such an amazing person. So, thank you.
That's great. Good. And we're going to take a photo. Trustee Irvin and Dr. Noguchi will join you as well. Keep everybody in the photo. That's great. Great. Thank you, everyone. And that's all the recognitions for this evening.
All right, thank you. So we're moving on to the approval of the proposed consent agenda. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on an item that is on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by trustee Newman, seconded by trustee West. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to A9, approval of the order of discussion action items. Are there any members of the board and or public who wish to speak regarding the order of the discussion action items? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion items? Moved by trustee Brown, seconded by trustee Newman. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Sorry, I'm tickled. I have received 2 cards. So this takes us to our period for public presentation. I want to thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Your attendance shows your interest in our schools, and for that, we thank you. The period for public comment is limited to 30 minutes. Time will be allotted equally to individuals based on the number of request cards submitted, and the maximum time for any one speaker is 3 minutes. I also want to remind you that if you wish to make a complaint against a specific district employee, you should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are available in the lobby, as are agenda copies, which outline the procedures we will observe during the Thank you for your patience. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. Before I ask tonight's speakers to address the board, I want to clarify that we may not engage in any discussion on topics that will be raised because we are legally obligated to provide the public with advance notice about topics that the board will be discussing. Agendas are intended to inform the public about all topics of discussion and action, so anyone interested in a particular subject on the agenda may attend the meeting and address the board. While we cannot engage in discussion on items not on the agenda, I assure you that we will listen attentively to your comments. Again, I thank you for joining us tonight. I have 2 cards, and I will ask each speaker when they're called to the podium and address the board. You'll each have 3 minutes to speak. My first card is Barbara Moore.
Hi, good evening. I wanted to come to the board this evening because Robertson Road staff has done an exceptional job. I took guardianship of my niece who is legally blind, cerebral palsy. She has a multitude of disabilities. They have accomplished, she accomplished going to 6th grade camp, which I thought was never going to happen for her. She enjoyed herself. Her vision specialist, her cane, her every step has just been remarkable. She has grown quite a bit in her milestones, and I just felt like the staff needed the recognition behind all of that. And I just want you to know that I retired from the county 20 years as an advocate. So trust me, this is a wonderful, wonderful school. And I am proud to say that in every aspect that I go to. So I just wanted to bring that forth and have that said today. So I just want to say thank you. And I also want to submit this letter to the board because I also want it given to you in writing. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I have Debbie Martinez.
Good evening. It's been a while. Good evening, Madam President, trustees of the board, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and her cabinet. My name is Debbie Martinez, and I hold 3 titles within this community. The first one would be the Latino Community Roundtable. I represent their educational liaison. I'm also a team member of Advocate for Justice, which is our legal counsel in San Francisco. I also am founder of We Are La Raza Parents Union. I stand as one, I represent many. Tonight I come before you on the Fremont Open Plan. I have some families in the back. I've brought petitions to Dr. Noguchi, and we are against it. And I'm gonna read what families that didn't have vehicles who speak Spanish wrote. And these are the parents from Garrison. I want to go on record to say that I was at the February 13th Fremont meeting, and it was at least 90% from what I was seeing, school employees that were for it, and yet Garrison had families that were not against it. On the 13th, it was less than 20, so that was not a fair forum. We wanted it all together, and it was not put together. So what they're saying is that they're single moms. They walk their children to school from Garrison to Garrison. There is no way that they're going to walk their children from Garrison all the way to Fremont. We've had already an accident where a child has got hit by a vehicle over on Orangeburg. So this open plan community does not want. And so we want to go on record tonight to indicate that this is not doable. Community is not accepting it. And if it goes forward, we will have to go forward as well. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. When I was at Fremont, the bathrooms were filthy. I don't know which one represents that district. I'd like to talk to you because our voices are not being heard. We're in election year. And so when you go under oath, taking the oath, we would like some representation. We would like stronger voices in each and every one of your districts. Thank you.
And that concludes our time for public comment. Now we'll move on to item B1, the Board of Education Student Representative Report. And Arnav will give his report.
All right, guys. Good evening. I wasn't here last meeting, so I have a little more information than usual. Interhigh met in early February, on February 4th, so I'll give some of the information. Some of it's outdated, but a lot of the schools are doing fun activities to prepare for their incoming classmen. Both Davis and Downey, for instance, had 8th grade rallies, which was really cool. And then Mohai also invited kids to shadow their IB program, which is super cool. On?
It is.
Hello? Oh, yeah, that's better. All right. Also, a lot of the schools are doing their talent shows in preparation for Tournament of Talent. Schools like Johansen, Enox, Davis, Gore. If they haven't done it already, it's probably coming up this week. For instance, Enox is this Thursday, which is really good because we need the finalists for Tournament of Talent. And also, a lot of schools have, all the schools have finished their winter homecoming, which is really cool. A couple of specifics from last meeting. Downey did a coat drive, and it's an annual thing they do where they gather clothes and have donations, and then they actually give those back to their feeder schools, which is a really cool thing they do for the community, and that's every year. So I was really happy to hear that. And also, Davis is planning a multicultural week where all the cultural clubs on campus get together. You know, they do their whole show, and it's a whole week-long event. And we thought that was really cool. They're doing it this March. And Enox did something similar last year, and we're gonna do something again. We call it Culture Week. We're gonna shoot for it in April. So it's nice to hear more schools are doing a cultural week, which is very smart because a lot of high schools have cultural clubs. And for the meeting we had just now, we had a meeting on February 18th. A lot of the schools are planning cool rallies. Now that winter homecoming is done and a lot of the big events like floats and hallways are out the window and completed, it's time just to like do fun activities. Enox and Mohai are planning glow-in-the-dark rallies, which is really fun. They always get a big turnout. Also, Bayer hosted their crab feed, and Enox is going to do the same thing. And then for Valentine's Day, I thought this was really funny. Downey had like cute little pickup lines, like little love lines around campus to spread the love. I thought that was cool. That was really cute to hear. As for Tournament of Talent, we're really picking up pace now. Our main goal right now is, as the council, is just generate funds because we have a lot of things we want to do. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But right now, our main thing is we're contacting sponsors. We're really getting a hold of everyone, trying to get as many funds as we can. In addition to this, we thought of another cool idea of having the leadership classes of all these schools get involved. For instance, I'll just use Downey as an example. They're going to have their freshman, sophomore, junior, senior classes in their leadership classes generate a minimum of $100 to go back towards Tournament of Talent. So right there, that's just like $400 from one school without even contacting sponsors. And Downey was just one school. A couple other high schools are doing that, which I thought was really cool. And that's something we haven't done before for Tournament of Talent. So hopefully we can generate a lot of funds this year. And I say that because we have a lot of cool ideas. We want to do like maybe a t-shirt for each school at the Tournament of Talent, get more turnout. Also, we want to make a pretty pamphlet and have a lot of advertising and promotion for this event because it'll be great. Apart from that, that's pretty much it. If y'all have questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you so much, Arnav. That was great. And now on to item B2, approval of department reorganizations, fiscal, curriculum, and instruction, and professional development, and information and educational technology services. And this will come from Associate Superintendents Odell, Zerly, and Selkin.
Well, good evening, President Marks, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and my colleagues, and everybody who's still here. So tonight, our purpose, let's see if we have a slide deck. Our purpose tonight is really to revisit what happened on February 11th, and we had a request that we look a little bit more specifically on the positions that were overlapping in different departments and content areas. So we're going to provide some detailed information upon this, make sure that we've answered your questions within the reorg, and ask you for your approval. Thank you. Okay, we'll catch up here. So again, we'll review those positions and that crossover that we talked about in the request on February 11th. We'll go through our questions, and then we'll request the approval for the various reorganizations. So I'd like to point out here, again, the wording is a little bit small, but I highlighted it with the bright blue bullets or stars. These positions actually work with other departments very closely. And so on the very far, that would be your left, that first position is, oh my goodness, it's so small I can barely even see it here. Let me pull it up on my slides. That is the induction coaches. So the induction coaches also, we commonly know those as the BITSA coaches. They'll be working carefully, closely with the site administration, making sure that everybody has the needs being met through those coaches. Of course, they're connected with human resources and ensuring that we're providing adequate supports for what all of our new teachers in that induction program need. Right above that to the right, that is the Administrator of Special Programs induction. And AKA, that is the induction manager. That position, again, will work very closely with human resources as per contract, give supports with even the induction folks that BITSA, the technical BITSA program, do not provide supports to CTE teachers and interns. This person will ensure that we are reaching out and meeting the needs of those teachers as well with curriculum and instruction, the sites, doing walkthroughs with the principals to give feedback and best practices and supports. So there'll be a lot of overlap between those induction folks and the other departments. If you move across the page, you're going to see 3 stars in a row. And those 3 stars are, the top one is a digital curriculum coordinator. This person will be working very closely with Russ's team, our CTO, in supporting all the needs that teachers have since the curriculum is digital. Sometimes teachers can't quite navigate, they have difficulty finding the bank of questions. It has all to do with not only curriculum, but how do you navigate the digital pieces of the curriculum? How do you ensure that you're using properly all that comes in the package of the curriculum? So we'll be working very closely again with Brad Godot's team, the sites, as well as Russ's team with the server, the network, the digital package and what's coming with that. Right below that, you're going to see the VAPA. That's your Visual Arts and Performing Arts and PE coordinator. They'll be working very closely with senior directors, athletic directors, et cetera, to ensure, and then also the heads and departments of the different VAPA courses to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our VAPA teachers. Sometimes they're singletons and they don't always have a partner at their site. Let's say there's one dance teacher or one digital arts teacher at the school. So we're going to provide those connections with them and for them to the other sites and to other VAPA teachers. Finally, at the bottom of that list, the 3rd star there, I labeled it Project Lead the Way. That's a misnomer. It really is a STEAM, science STEAM coordinator. So I'm really glad that you were able to, Trustee Brown and Trustee Irvin, you talked about seeing STEAM earlier. This person is going to work very closely with our programs, with our pathways to ensure that we are giving those teachers all the supports they need, especially in this new way of thinking and designing lessons through that lens of STEAM. So for CIPD and our reorg, you requested to see which of these positions had overlap with other departments and what that detailed, and that's what those stars indicate. So I'm going to speak on behalf of, I can't see him behind the dais there, but I believe Associate Soup, Russ Selkin is on the other side of that. And he had already done a great job of pointing out the overlap in his positions. They are in gray, including one digital coordinator that will support my digital coordinator, and they will be working together. So there's quite a bit of overlap in his department as well. Thank you. Can you zoom out, please? Thank you. There we go. And again, I cannot see Associate Soup for Fiscal Services, but I know he's behind this dais that way. When we presented on February 11th, trustees, you did not really have any specific examples or questions for him, but we wanted to make sure that we included that as well, that his organization chart has changed slightly. So at this time, we are requesting the approval for the district reorganizations in the 3 different areas: curriculum and instruction and professional development. We're asking for the approval in information and educational technology services as well as financial services. Do you have any questions or clarifications you would like us to give?
We have one light. Trustee Newman.
All right, thank you, Ms. Adele and Mr. Selkin and Mr. Zierli for putting this together. And I appreciate the connotation about which ones are overlap positions. I think that's really important. I mean, one of the issues consistently since I've been on the board these many years has been the idea that each of the departments kind of exist as silos. So I think it's really important to recognize the cooperation and collaboration that we're expecting down at our site levels to be happening at district as well. So I had a question on the chart, the digital curriculum coordinator that's on your chart, Ms. Odell, and on Mr. Sulkin's chart. Is that the same person, or are those 2 people?
There are 2 people.
Okay, so the person on your chart is a so they're both certificated.
They're both teachers certificated.
They're both
yes.
teachers. Okay, so I just want to make sure I read it. They're both teachers. And is yours a new position in your department? It is in yours, but it isn't in yours?
It is not in ours currently. We have the coaches actually trying to field this work, and it's taking them away from the classrooms and the teachers.
Okay, so it's a new position in both, and we're looking for somebody. What's going to be the difference between who you're going to hire and who you're going to hire? So, like in terms of education and background, maybe both of you can chime in.
Since I can't see you over there.
Yeah, he's there. Trust me.
I'll speak first to my side of the house. We have one job description. So what we're looking for is somebody that can do either side of the house, if you will. However, this person on my side will be the person, kind of the front office person, taking the phone calls, talking with the teachers, working through what their immediate need is. Sometimes the teacher just looks at their screen and says, I can't find it. I'm not even sure where the bank of questions is to develop the assessment is. So the person on my side of the house is going to be the front end, working with that teacher and trying to decipher what exactly do they need from the curriculum. And they may be the ones that actually go out to the site to work with the teacher, whereas Russ's person could do that too. We want to make sure that we're always cross-training. But Russ's person will also be the one that's interfacing with the publisher and dealing with all the back end. Let's say HMH goes down that day. That's our Houghton Mifflin, our publisher. If they go down, somebody also needs to be helping the teachers, and somebody needs to be on the phone with the publisher as well. So they can interface and do each other's job, because you never know if one needs to be out. We still have to meet the needs of the teachers right then and there as fast as possible.
And just to add to that, if you look at the executive summary on the Venn diagram on page 10, it kind of shows that overlap and that synergy. And one thing to report back is what was the catalyst for this is this last fall is that we had her staff sitting in the office working and coordinating with a vendor as well as with the teachers. And so then it was kind of a lose-lose. We were losing classroom time to help assist the teachers. We were also losing technical support time in the sense that we had her coordinators on the line with vendors trying to solve a technical issue. Okay. So that was that overhead that we were losing classroom time.
Okay. I appreciate you guys answering those questions and describing how it would be different. I think that was the only 2 that I saw that was concerned about an overlap. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions? Seeing none, out to the public for comments. Anyone in the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, back to the board for approval. Do we have a motion for approval? I have a motion by trustee Newman, yes? Oh, any comments? Yes?
I just wanted to make a comment that, we've been through a few reorganizations. We've been through a few of this kind of thing. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is the idea that you guys are understanding what everybody else is doing. And that's unique to this is going on here. And I'm excited about that because I don't know how many of these I've approved in the 9 years I've been on the board, but this is exciting to see. We all have one goal, and that's to improve student achievement and making, improving the lives of our students. And so just to kind of see that play out on the chart and how we're doing it, I'm excited. So I'm excited to make a motion for approval of this.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Irvin, and I'll just say, yes, I agree with trustee Newman. I appreciate the thoroughness that went into this reorganization. It's been done appropriately and well thought out, so thank you for that. All right, so all of those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Moving on to item B3, report on federal program monitoring. And it looks like Luzelyn Perez will be giving this report.
Good evening, board. Our district underwent a federal program monitoring review, and so what I'm going to be walking us through right now was the purpose of the review that was conducted, information regarding the findings of the federal program review, our next steps, and then at the end, any questions you may have. And joining me for each part of the review were each of the leads for the different instruments of the review. So this is going to be several people will be coming up here to share about each instrument that had findings under the review. So federal program monitoring review, when districts receive what are called categorical federal funds from the federal government, they can be identified for review. The California Department of Education conducts these reviews. They're paid by and so the federal government gives them the conditions under which they have to come out and do the audits. They have components that the CDE must meet to the federal government. So the way they meet those requirements is by reviewing school districts that receive funding. It's on a 4-year cycle. Different areas are identified every other year to either be online or in-person reviews. It doesn't mean that a district is reviewed every other year. It had been since 2015. It was the last time that our high school district was reviewed. But there's the potential to have a review every other year. That is a possibility where in one cycle it would be on site, and then the following cycle could be online for a district. When a review is conducted and then there are findings, they articulate those findings to us throughout the process. And then they share with us what the resolutions would be for each one of those findings. We had many programs reviewed. So listed here are all the programs that were reviewed. Because we receive funding as an elementary district and as a high school district, we had 2 weeks of a review. And in one of these instruments, we were reviewed twice. The findings, as you will see, were very parallel in both the elementary and the high school district, but we did get to do this twice. This is aligned to our board goals as stated, in particular 1.3, focus on English learner growth or English proficiency. The professional development part was really highlighted as well in goal 2, which was part of the SEI review and other components in ELD. In goal 3, we focused a lot on our work with parents and families. That really shows a lot in the different aspects of this review. And of course, it's important because these are funds that we're talking about, so that aligns to goal 4. And in goal 5, of course, it's always important that we are hiring and recruiting staff that are aligned to the different programs that we want to make sure meet the needs of our students. So with that, my colleague, Ms. Mota, who jumped in as an interim director, and she's going to share with you the findings relevant to the English Learner Review for both the high school and the elementary district.
Good evening. Nice seeing all of you again. President Marks, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, cabinet, and of course others in attendance. So I'm here to present to you the English learner programs for FPM. So under English learners, there's 15 categories which we got reviewed. So I'm going to go over some of them with you, and then I'll go over the actual findings, because even though we only had 4 findings for English learners, there are a lot of action plans that I had to submit in order to not have a finding. So I want to make sure we're all aware of that as well. So we'll start with the parent involvement, which was category 1 and 2 and 13. So for category 1, it's the ELAC, and category 2 is a DLAC. So one recommendation that was given to us was that our parents lacked why they were in those committees. So an action plan is created in order to, so that our parents are more aware and that they know that it's for them to be advocates in their ELAC meetings, and also that there's legal requirements for both ELAC and DLAC. So both have an action plan. For the language program options and parent choice, we just had to amend that it was a parent choice, so those simple words, in our handbook. And then for programs and policies for category 3, it was some of our APs needed amendments, so then we just had to have go over a plan of how we're going to go over the amendments. We also had category 4, 5, 6, and then 7 is a finding, 9 is a finding, and then 10, I'll probably be here again with you guys for the redesignation. There's a minor tweak that we have to do for grades 9 and 10, so you don't want that to come as a surprise to you guys later on. So the 4 findings. So our 4 findings were categories 7, 9, 14, and 15. So 7 and 9 are programs and policies in place. For number 7, which is supplement, not supplant, our funds were incorrectly used for Title III, which there were various reasons why they were not correctly used. Some were descriptions, job descriptions. For number 9, we didn't have an evaluation of our EL programs, so we didn't have data to prove that our English learners were making progress or not making progress. For number 14 and 15 is where it affects the classrooms the most. So ELD, what came out as a finding for both elementary district and high district is that either no ELD instruction was seen at the sites that we were at, ELD instruction was not aligned with ELD standard, for example, language for learning, or an AVID or Read 180 class was used in lieu of designated ELD. So those were the findings for ELD 14. For access to the core, it's that not all ELs are enrolled in core courses. So the law changed in 2018 and it began this school year, and that's why I put Assembly Bill 2735, which requires that all English learners have access to core content classes. Meaning if some ELs were not in an English, math, or science or history class, that's why we got a finding in that area. Next, I have Kim Newton to present the other findings. Thank you.
Good evening, President Marks, trustees, and Superintendent Noguchi. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about SEI, which is Title II funds for supporting effective instruction. So these funds are given to the district to help us recruit, train, and retrain quality teachers and administrators. They're allocated to districts to support ongoing professional learning for our teachers, our paraprofessionals, as well as our administrators. And they're basically used to help districts increase student achievement by improving the quality of our teachers and our administrators. So there were 12 categories. We had findings in 3 of those categories. The first one was under identifying and addressing disparities. And basically what they found in the high school district is that our low income and minority students were taught at a higher rate by our least experienced teachers. And so that was a finding for us. The other was in category 5, the use of our Title II funds, which was basically our funds were used incorrectly. And then SEI 12, which is data and ongoing consultation, that really we had no system in place to monitor the progress and evaluate the progress and the use of those funds. So the kind of findings are that we need to do a needs assessment, create a plan, and then within that plan have a really strong system for evaluating the effectiveness of the use of those funds. So I am turning it over to Senior Director Hinkle for the next. Oh, I'm sorry, Lucelena, my apologies. Title I.
So in addition to leading the overall coordination of the FPM, I led 2 instruments. And so the first of those is Title I, which is called compensatory education. And so for compensatory education, all of our findings fell under one category. So you'll see these listed in the report as one finding, which is CE10. And so in 3 different areas. The first is the way that we have been listing how we distribute our funds consistent with the CONAP. And so this is a simple correction on the SPSAs. We had been including in the SPSAs the centralized services, which was a past practice. And so it's no longer a practice that we need to continue. So that is a simple correction that we need to do for the SPSAs. So there's no fiscal implication there. The next was time, effort, and duty statements, and that is around time accounting. So when staff are federally funded, there are certain rules that we need to follow around how we do the time and effort certification. So for that, we need to delineate our job descriptions or create duty statements that specify the Title I allowable activities that the staff member would engage in during their federally funded time. And then last was under the general ledger category, and that they did find a few of our funded activities that they deemed were unallowable under Title I. Another monitored area is fiscal monitoring. Fiscal monitoring covers all the federal funds. So this included Title I, Title II, Title III. So the fiscal monitors, in addition, where you see each instrument having some findings, in addition to that, a fiscal monitoring team was looking at things just directly through the lens of their fiscal instrument. And there, so this is where you see a little bit of the repetition. They also wrote us up for the time accounting requirements, and that they want to see the policies and procedures that we're going to follow moving forward. So that was the finding there. And for allowable costs, and again, it was, as you've been hearing in the other presentations, the allowable use of funds under Title I, II, and III. So that wraps it up for fiscal monitoring. And now we will have Senior Director Daniel Hinkle with Educator Equity and UCP.
All right, good evening. For the first instrument of education equity, our findings were really in the area of updates that are needed to board policies. EE01, let me advance, sorry. EE01 and 02 really centered around the fact that our process that was outlined in 2 different administrative regulations, one for sexual harassment and one for non-discrimination, intimidation, harassment, and bullying, did not clearly explain our complaint procedure process. And so we are working to make those needed updates for those 2 policies. EE03 in the area of suicide prevention, we do have an existing policy. However, it needs to be updated to be in alignment with gamut language and also to be reflective of the CDE model policy on suicide prevention. Next, in EE07, we needed a policy that really ensured that all students have access to courses, and that policy received final approval this evening. That was the policy on course of study. And then in the area of uniform complaint procedures, everybody's favorite policy, we needed to make some additional fine-tuning in that policy, and that process had taken place. However, it was not completed by the time that the review ended, so they noted a finding in those areas. So relative to some of the other areas, these are relatively easy to make the needed corrections. All right. Next up is Senior Director Heidi Nunes.
Good evening. The Early Learning and Care represents our state preschool and family child care network, and the purpose of these contracts is to provide comprehensive and coordinated social, cognitive, and emotional development programs for our youngest learners, as well as to provide support for our families in parenting education and involvement, health services, nutrition education, and identifying the needs of all of our children, and providing referrals to the appropriate community resources. So FPM was very positive for our department, and we received two very common findings that our analysts shared that most departments do receive. And the first finding was with our Family Child Care Network, and that was under the area of attendance. And it was that at least 9 children from 5 families didn't receive care consistent with their certified hours of enrollment. What this means is that on the day that the reviewer chose to monitor, that the provider was present, an assistant was present, but somebody had called in sick, and so we weren't able to stay within ratio, so the provider had to ask parents to receive alternate care. And so we will be working on a plan to address those. Our second finding was in the area of the environmental rating scale, and that was to ensure that we're providing quality classroom environments as well as the relationships between the teachers and the students and the families. And on that very stringent rubric, you have to receive a subscale of a 5.0 or higher. And in 2 of those areas, we received a score that was lower than the 5.0. And so again, we'll be working on that to see what we can do. I have to celebrate one thing, though, that our analyst did say. She was very excited with the progress that we've made in our department, as well as saying that our Family Child Care Network is an exemplary program and that we are a model program for the state of California. And so she has asked, and we've already had multiple analysts call to schedule visits to some of our family child care homes. So now our goal is to replicate what's going on in our network in our center-based programs.
Good evening. I'm here to report on the findings for our physical education instrument. We had 2 findings. This is a high school only review. This was not done for the elementary. First one is in PEO 6, which has to do with pupil exemptions. So not all students received 400 minutes of physical education every 10 days as required by law. This will require us to make a few changes on the way that we grant the allowable exemptions according to our current board policy. And the other one was PEO 7, teaching and evaluation. Not all of our students receive instruction in the 8 mandated areas of learning of physical education. This has to do with our course outlines. We need to realign some of those mandated areas to make sure that every student has the opportunity to have all 8 of those. And those were the only findings for that. I think I'm turning it back over to Dr. Perez.
So what are our next steps? We are researching our options for resolution of findings pertinent to each area, and also looking at the areas where they overlap. Creating task force to ensure that problem solving and collaboration are done with our Modesto Teacher Association. As you heard, job descriptions and other areas are listed here, as well as time accounting. So we're going to work closely with MTA. Communicate with key stakeholders for recommended courses of action. While the CDE did give us some specific areas and ways to improve, we're going to look at, within that, what works best for us in Modesto City Schools. We have timeframes that we need to follow. We're going to complete those resolutions within the allowable timeframes. I know that you saw a date in the report of mid-March. They understand that districts put in for extensions. That is very typical, and so we will be, as needed, putting in extensions for some of the deadlines so that we can make sure that we take the appropriate time to find adequate solutions. And we will continue to update the board as we move along in the resolutions of these findings. I do want to say that when the reviewers visited our 5 schools, comments were very positive about how engaged our students were at each school and how welcoming all 5 of our FPM sites were. So they had a lot of positive things to say. All you see in the report is obviously the findings, but there were a lot of things to celebrate as part of the review that we underwent over the 2 weeks.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. Superintendent Noguchi?
Yes, President Marks, there's just a few comments that I want to make and a clarification as we go down the section for questions and clarifications. First off, I want to thank everyone that put hours and hours and hours into this review. I appreciate your efforts. We have a lot going on in the district, and it's hard when outside folks come in and want to, pick up every rock and look in every folder to see where we are not in alignment or not. So I do want to say thank you, and it's been an excellent job. On a side note, I've been through many, many FPMs. I can't think how many, 10 perhaps, and I've never seen anything like this. And I do question the process and some of the work that was done. I am working with our general counsel on identifying some specific outcomes that are findings that have been identified here, particularly around the ed code that states a school district that has 2 districts overseen by one board can in fact have a one budget, and many of the findings on there are that's intertwined, and we don't believe that at the end we will have findings in those areas. It's going to take a couple months to be able to flesh this out, but both Mr. Munoz and myself believe that we're on pretty solid ground to be able to challenge some of these areas. So with that, I don't discount the professionalism of the folks that came to the district. It's just I've never seen anything like it, and we've got some ed code that supports that. So as we go down the conversation around some of these findings, recognize I don't believe that I'm hopeful that they won't be findings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for board member questions. So I have Trustee Newman.
All right, thank you for this thorough report. I want to commend the superintendent on the transparency of this. I don't think I've seen this, not since I've been on the board. And obviously it's been going on because it happens every 4 years. So this is just great to go through this process and understand what we need to be doing, because some of these findings, as Ms. Hinkle pointed out, were board policies we needed to update. And so my first question is for Dr. Perez. This potential 2-year review, you mentioned that as a potential. So do we have our next review scheduled, or does that potential for a 2-year review loom large?
The CDE announces that in mid-March, so we wouldn't know with certainty until March of 2021.
Okay.
Because right now, this is one of the cycles we're in right now, and so the next cycle wouldn't even kick in until the 2022-23 school year. So we would know in the spring of 2021 if we were up for review or not. And it would be an online review. We don't know with certainty if we would be reviewed again or not. However, given the number of findings, they tell us that they have a mechanism by which they identify the districts that are going to be under review. They have an algorithm that they follow. Part of the algorithm does include the amount of federal funding that a district receives. And we do receive quite a bit of federal funding. That is actually one of the largest pieces of the algorithm. They indicated to us that the number of findings wasn't as big of an indicator to be identified as a district that would be reviewed again.
But the amount of money we get would be.
Yes, that is, and they do try to pick different districts. They only can sample districts. So, if in our cohort of districts there are a number of other districts that receive as much as we do, then that would decrease our likelihood. But that really isn't the case. We are within our cohort a district that does receive a large amount of Title I in particular.
Well, and it's indicative of the population we serve. I mean, compensatory education is serving disadvantaged students, and so it's indicative of who we serve, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the other thing you mentioned, which I just wanted to understand that better, was you said that we were reviewed twice. Is that normal?
Well, because our funding, as Dr. Noguchi was mentioning, we are one LEA.
Yeah.
But we receive our funding under 2 different CDE codes.
Okay.
We receive funding for the K-8, and we receive funding under 912. So when they identify us, they looked at us as 2 separate districts.
Okay.
And so it took a lot of explaining to them that we were really one LEA.
Okay, so that's why, because of the fact that we are 2 and 1.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and then I think my last question is for Ms. Hinkle. Thank you, Dr. Perez, for your help on this, helping me understand this better. And my question for Ms. Hinkle is, okay, so board policies, we've been adopting a plethora of board policies. It's been a Herculean effort. So have we done what we needed in terms of this review? Because I know that much of this was in process as this review is going on. So at the end of the day, where we stand right now, would they have these kind of findings with our policies?
We still have several that just need to come back for a final approval.
Okay.
In the administrative regulation area. And then our suicide prevention policy, we're going to do a complete overhaul of that. We are, I would say, 90% there. We will need to cross-check it with the CDE model policy, and then we'll be bringing that forward.
And I'm glad you brought up the suicide prevention, because that was my next question. Was I don't recall having seen that, so we haven't looked at that, right?
Last time it was approved, I believe, was 2017.
Okay, so it's been a while. Okay, I thought in the last few. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice President West.
This is my first time going through this, so it was a little overwhelming. I can tell how much work has gone into it, and I appreciate everything everyone has done. I also concur that I appreciate the transparency that we have. It's hard to hear difficult things about your district and areas where we're falling short, but I think we need to know, our community needs to know, and it's good to hear that we have a plan of how to fix these things. So I really, really appreciate that. I had just one question on, it was on page 4, under the English learner programs, concerning parent involvement. And we talked about, you mentioned that there were a few ways that our parents were unaware of how the committees were working or why they were placed on them, and that one of the things we need to do is communicate to our parents. How do we plan to do that?
So we have a plan in action to retrain all admin. That way, because what was misunderstood by the parents was how they got voted into a committee. So they did not know what type of committee it was, what their responsibilities are. So we need to retrain the admin in order so that every meeting has a legal representation that needs to be. They need to know the parents need to know what in each meeting is needed. For example, like how else they get voted in. If you're allowed to be there, it needs to be made up of English learner parents for the most part. And then what does that mean? If you get voted into DLAC, what do you have to do to be part of DLAC? You can't just go and say you're a member and not get voted in.
And I'm sure we have translation services for
Yes.
all of these meetings. Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Walker.
I would agree with Trustee Newman when she said, and I thank every single board member up here and every person on cabinet who has gone through this monstrous policy update review. And I do hope that at the end of the day, all that being done, minimize what's here, because it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of policies we've updated over the last 3 years. I wish we would have started a couple years earlier, but we are trucking along, and I'm grateful for all that work because it matters. And it matters because all the work you guys have to do and staff does, and people taking their nights off to come in here and listen to us go round and round about wordsmithing, but it's huge and it's appreciated. And I do hope that it made a difference here and that it's not as thick because we went through all that work. I had a couple of questions. One you already answered, which was the courses of study, which I thought, how is that there when we just passed this? So we completed that tonight. The second one, I looked at the actual report, and I went looking for what I thought was the heaviest lift, and this may fall over here to Miss Odell, who's also blocked from me because I've got a projector, but that's okay. The heaviest part of this, and I thought about this, and I've talked with some folks at the junior college level and the Cal State University level on this new law on remediation. It's a heavy lift based on, and this is where I ask the questions, do I understand this correctly? Because what I see and what I'm hearing, you can't just do remediation. It's remediation at here, but you've got core instruction up here. You have to do them in tandem. And from what I'm talking to folks at the college level, it's a huge amount of work in the sense that you've got a student in remediation, but they're at the same time in a core course, how do you balance that without overwhelming the student and still meeting the requirement? And it's not just EL, it's math, it's anything. Does that seem like the biggest sort of balance that has to be managed here? Because that's new and different, and that changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Well, I think you're particularly talking about the questions that are revolving around remediation in math in our colleges, and they've actually put off the vote on requiring that, and they've been removing the remediation courses that are even allowed in our four-year colleges, which is making those who may be completing high school barely, they're just getting out by the skin of their teeth, and when they go to the junior college or they go to the four-year college, those professors are saying they're not prepared. So that is to be seen if they're going to remove those remediation courses, and it's incumbent upon us to prepare our students so that they can be successful. So you're absolutely right. What we've learned is that, and Maricela can speak well to this, she was just side by side with our auditor. We learned that once again, as 1974 Lau versus Nichols said, that our English learners have to have access to core content. It's back in a big way. They just presented a new law. It has to be core content and remediation, but remediation never replaces core content.
But they have to be balanced, right? In the sense that, because what I worry about is, yes, I've heard about the college level, and this seems like it's now sort of leaking downstream to us now, in the sense that you've got to do both. And so I guess at least the radar that went off in my mind was, how do you balance that without overwhelming the student? That seems like a very difficult task to do.
And the teacher, correct?
And the teacher, and everybody, and the parents. Because at least what I'm hearing from folks that are in the college level is that the students really are struggling to sort of track along, essentially doing two different courses at the same time. Because you really are remediating at the same time and then also doing the upper level content, which is what it's leaking downstream, and my concerns are at least warranted that it's a heavy lift and it has to be balanced carefully so you don't overwhelm folks. Thank you. I will reserve the rest of my comments for when it comes back to the board. And again, I appreciate everybody's work on the policies and all the work, because it has been a long haul.
True. So, and then I had just a question on, so we had some findings on incorrect use of funds. So just how that process is going to work to reimburse the general fund. I'm not sure. Anyway, so if you could explain that a little bit better for us.
And as Dr. Noguchi mentioned, this is under review.
Yes.
So the amounts that we see in the report, they are under review.
Okay.
So we don't pay back the federal funds to the CDE. What the expectation from the CDE is that we show a reversal of funds. So if we were to take any example there of a use of funds that they deemed unallowable, then we would have to show how we reversed those funds and used non-federal funds instead to pay for that. So then the federal funds go back into the federal fund bucket. Okay. So then we have to find another use for those federal funds in an allowable manner. But none of what's here constitutes a payback to the CDE of dollars.
Okay. I figured it was a shifting of funds, just wasn't sure which.
That is
where
correct.
it went back to, so, okay, thank you. That helps a lot. And then I just wanted to commend the early learning program. That is so cool to have some good news in the midst of this kind of difficult report. Just that it's exemplary, so thank you to Ms. Nunes and all that's going on and how it's being taken care of. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing more, reports on how, just that we have people coming in. I like that we have that in many of our programs in our schools, that parents, people from other districts come in to look at it. So I appreciate that. So thank you. Now out to the public. Are there any comments from the public? Ms. Martinez?
Debbie Martinez from Advocate for Justice, along with the Latino Community Roundtable stakeholder. I have a lot of questions.
And
I want to begin.
I just want to say up front, you'll have 3 minutes. So I know
That's
they'll
fine.
put up a timer.
I can do
for
it
you.
in 3 minutes. You guys
Okay.
trained me well for the last 3 years.
Okay.
Transparency. Yes, that's where we're at right now, transparency. Buildings look good, but I have been in this since 2017. I came to these board meetings. I brought awareness to these board meetings, countless hours. We gave up. I gave up. I don't make six figures. I don't take a paycheck to make sure that our children's funds are being utilized in the manner that they're supposed to be utilized. Yes, we should pick up every rock and every folder and make sure that we are turning every stone to make sure we are in compliance with state and federal laws. The one I want to focus in is the UPC, Uniform Complaint Procedure. I see only one. Okay, I'll give it. But here's the gap. When I am out there advocating for our families and we want to do a uniform complaint procedure, we can fill the gap at the site in the district, because I say go to the site, we drop them off at the site. We should be able to conduct our business at the site, not have sites say, well, you need to go to the district. Get to the district. District says you need to go back to the site. We need to clean this up, because this is a law that we need to allow our parents to voice under these policies. Another thing I want to bring to the attention is the board policies. I have exhausted going to civil rights trying to get it right. So when will we get our board policy updates would be our question. I don't know who's going to answer that one. So that would be the question and a comment. If we can get it right at the school site so that my parents won't have to be chasing the tail.
All right, thank you.
So, I don't know. I'll go sit down.
Okay, yes, so I know we are in the process of we voted on hundreds and hundreds of the board policies, and they are, I think a lot of them are already on the web. And then the rest of them are coming as we approve the second reading. So tonight we had about, 25 or 30 that we approved tonight. And so each board meeting, we have had 3 Saturdays where the board has spent 6 hours on each Saturday approving and going through probably at least 100 policies at each board meeting. So we've gone through, so just since January. So we've probably approved maybe 300 since
300,
January.
okay.
So
Now,
they'll be on the website.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy.
Yeah, shortly.
Other than website, we are servicing our English learners, low income and foster. So how would they get those policies if they don't have access to websites?
So I would believe that we can, I'll let the staff ask. I'll ask Ms. Hinkle. Are you able to answer that question?
I would just say that if there was any time that a community member or a family was in requesting a policy, any school site or district staff would be happy to print that off to provide a hard copy for that individual. I don't know that we've had people ask for those, but we'd be happy to supply those if they were asked for.
We have had, but we were never offered. As a parent advocate, we're La Raza Parents Union, Social Justice Movement. We would like to conduct our business at the site, so if you can clean those sites up so that when we go on site, especially me when I'm there, I don't get what is being approved up here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So in the past, just as a board member from the past, just to clarify, I have at my home 2 binders that are about this thick each, probably 6 inches wide, and those are the board policies. So we just updated those. So that's about how much information it's been in the past. So I appreciate that we have web pages that are easily accessible now for the public, where before it wasn't. You'd have to make a trip down here and look it up in a binder. So it's nice to have the internet. Yes, so thank you. Okay, next, go ahead, Aaron.
I'm Aaron Anguiano, the president of the Latino Community Roundtable, and I'm concerned about these findings. They're serious, and I think that the board and the superintendent and the cabinet have to really look into this. Somebody's responsible for these programs, and somebody needs to pay attention. Somebody needs to be fired, that's my opinion. Anyways, about this uniform complaint procedure, I had 2 incidents at Marton because my children attend Marton, but I never heard of this uniform procedure. So somebody needs to tell us, or somebody needs to put something there. You have a complaint, fill out this form, and we'll deal with it. Instead of just raising hell and getting upset with people and being kicked out of the school and stuff like that. So I think that we need to do something where we know, okay, you have a complaint, here's the form. Thank you very much. Somebody will deal with it. That would be a good idea. But that's all. I'm worried about the findings and make sure the funds are spent well, that our children are taught well, because we have 70% minority students in the district and then a lot of English learners, and so we need to educate them. And I have 2 children there at Marton, and one is 3 years old, so in a couple of years she's going to be there too. And I support the public schools. I don't want to send them to private school. I really don't. And so I'm here to see what the board does, and I want to see that my children are provided the right education and they're up to grade level. That's my concern. Thank you.
Superintendent Noguchi?
So I would like to respond to both the last 2 comments. Recognizing a year or so ago, we were here doing a district reorganization, and within that district reorganization, we added 2 departments, one of which was curriculum professional learning, and the other one was a department for English language learners, which we hadn't had in the past. We had a compliance office. We had an office that oversaw funds, but we didn't have a department that was solely focused on the 7,000 EL students that we have, not even counting those that were redesignated. So over the course of this last year, we've had a very targeted focus on EL, not only in hiring folks to be able to do the work, but to realign that work to ensure that we've got support to the classrooms. But we've also commissioned our own study that came out 4 months ago that took a look at really the state of EL services within our district, and because of that report, we actually have considerably less findings than we would have had. So recognizing without full transparency, the board does not know what's lacking in the services for our children. As you've seen in this last 18 months, I pretty much put everything out there, and the purpose for that is to identify the work that needs to be done. So over the last 18 months, we've developed a department. We have commissioned a study. The federal government has now identified other areas that we will work on, and we will come back next year at the same time and be able to report to you the work that we have made on the areas of the English language learners, because I do agree with you that it's an important group of students, and over the next many years, they will be a focus. And I know I have the support of the board on that. Without full transparency, you don't know what you don't know. I heard from you that this was the first you've heard of the federal program monitoring. Well, they do federal program monitorings every couple years. This has been going on since the dawn of time. So this is the first time that they have been aware of all the findings. We very well could have just buried this and not put this out for the public, but what purpose is that going to really show? So with that, I'm confident that all of us working together and looking at the areas of growth that we need for our youth will get there.
Thank you, Dr. Noguchi, and I think it confirms some of the suspicions in the community that the district hides things, discriminates against Latinos, that you don't educate them well, and all those issues. And I'm really glad that you have a new superintendent that is addressing these issues. I never seen a superintendent working so hard as Ms. Noguchi. Really, I really applaud her because she's so quick in doing things and talking about all these things that she's doing, and I'm really happy that she's here, and I hope that she carries forward and the board makes sure that our education and the educational level of the students goes up, as we've seen some, but we're just very concerned in the community that we want our children to be educated and to be up to grade level. In fact, I have meetings at Merton where my son in 6th grade, I want him to be up to grade level, and what do I have to do? And I'm a lawyer. Just imagine other students that have parents that can go and demand anything. And if you demand, sometimes you're just kicked out or told to leave, and there's no forms to complain about or what to do. They don't know what to do. I don't even know what to do sometimes. But thank you.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, seeing no more comments from the public, back to the board for comments. Trustee Walker?
So, I sit on a committee with a gentleman just spoke with. We're on the Modesto City Charter Review Committee, and he's been to the board meeting many times. I think I would agree that when I actually read the report, it was sort of a jaw hit floor moment. And I think that's important. Why does bad news matter? Because bad news leads to positive change. And I think you pointed that out earlier. But it doesn't resolve jaw hit floor. I think one of the things we've talked about that was mentioned is going back and looking at the Title I funding. I think my take on that is very similar to what's been written every year. If you sort of look at EdSource and the community in California, and I mentioned at our last board meeting when I was talking about technology funding and carving out that block so that you can see where money goes. And it's a constant complaint from community groups, both at risk in Title I, English learners, African Americans, in big cities. The money comes in, it goes into a block, it's sort of an LCAP. You don't see where it goes. And I think it's difficult. And I think that may be it may not be part of the finding, but when I read that, that's sort of what I see. Is how do you see where the supplemental concentration Title I, Title III money goes, and does it end up in the right place? And it's very difficult to see in an interim budget or a second interim or a final. And it's sort of been this ongoing thing that goes around in the state. Every year, somebody writes about it, and then they rejigger how LCAP and LCFF is done. But it doesn't resolve that issue of how we look at that, both as a board member or as a community member or as anybody else looking at these issues, because it's tricky. The English learners supplant, not supplement. There was an issue I highlighted before the superintendent came here, and like she said, we have been at full tilt boogie. And so it dropped. I didn't push it. I was stunned at the number of issues. I highlighted two. One was the idea that we had a paid counselor out essentially recruiting outside the district into the Davis English Institute program. It was going on. It was common knowledge that they were out recruiting. The idea that it was a position is stunning. I think that goes to sort of gentleman's point that how do you get here? The second set in 2018 had an issue about data collection. I don't know how that happened. I think that's a conversation to have later. I think when you look at the EL stuff, I'd love to have another board member sit down with myself and somebody out here to walk me through these issues so that I have a real good understanding, because it goes on for page after page after page, and many of these issues line up, especially at Davis and English learners and ELD, with similar issues we saw in April 2019 when the County Office of Education reviewed the county charter. They pop up and they mirror. That's concerning. I think it should be concerning for everybody. And how we address this going forward, I want to be a part of that discussion so that I don't end up in this really frustrated mode of going, how do we find out answers? How did we get here? Because I think that's the difficult part of what you brought up, Dr. West, when you get bad news. How do you do oversight doesn't step on toes? Oversight isn't easy. When you're asking about math programs in 944 days to get back to a point where we're talking about Algebra 1 that I was talking about 3 years ago, the heavy lift to get the policy updates moving, the heavy lift on many of these different issues, let's sit down and let's work this out. And I really do want to understand how some of this got here, because I was stunned, I was shocked on many different levels. And I don't know that this is the place to hash that out, but I'm looking for a co-trustee volunteer to sit down with me and the superintendent and whoever you want to bring in the room, and let's sort of hash this out so that I can get my head wrapped around some of what I think are bigger issues here with respect to ELs, with respect to curriculum program review, if that makes sense, so that we end up in the same place.
So Trustee Walker, as mentioned just a few minutes ago, there was a structural deficit relative to program oversight, accountability, instructional strategies, professional learning. I could go on and on and on. There wasn't, how we got here was a lack of of understanding and awareness of where we need to go. Now we're putting those structures in place. We're creating plans for moving forward. So to sit and to identify the what, we've identified the what, and FPM did a wonderful job at doing that. And so now we move forward with how are we providing core for our kids? How are we providing ELD for our students in the elementary? In each of those, that's how we're going to work through this. This isn't going to get cleaned up in a year.
No.
It's going to take a couple years to clean up, but guaranteed it will get cleaned up. But to do an autopsy and say, how did we get here? We got here because there wasn't a EL department overseeing 14,000 children, right? So that's how we got here. Now, I don't know that you all would be aware of that. You don't know what you don't know. That was one of the first things I pointed out in my interview, is that you've got a large number of EL students, and I know that that's something that resonated with you. So we're here. And now what we do is we move forward, and the way we're going to see that it's working is the outcomes for students, because at the end of the day and at the end of this year, I am confident that we're going to see progress with our EL students, and we haven't even delved deep into these findings. This is deep into the years, but I'm still confident that we're going to be able to show gains for our EL students. So we're here, and now we embrace where we're at, and we move forward, and we do what's right. And it's not just district office, it's teachers, it's parents, it's board, it's community. We've got to all work together to be able to create the right conditions for our kids. And I'm confident we will. We clearly have the will, we have the desire, we have the educational expertise, and clearly the board now understands the direction that we need to go, and we'll do that together.
I don't disagree. I think that's part of what we've done. We talked about this in the beginning as we build capacity. We now have the capacity to jump into this and start working our way out. I just want to understand what that is as we go forward, because it helps me rest easier with the issue, because I do look downstream at the elementary district, which has a much higher propensity for Title I, disadvantaged learners, students that don't free and reduced lunches, all those issues. And I have absolute faith when we ring the bell next fall, we're going to be in a better place, because we've got yourself, Miss Odell, Mr. Godot, and all that support staff that we brought on. But I still think it's jaw hit floor, because that's not what you expect to see, or at least I didn't. I was taken aback, and 3, 4, 5, 6 steps is probably an underestimate. And I just want to understand sort of how that works together, because if you understand the problem, then maybe you're better equipped to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that Dr. Perez is going to bring back to us at some point information to the board as we work through some of these, as they solve the items that the federal program monitoring brought forward. So next on our, I thought it was Trustee Brown, but okay, Trustee Lopez. All right.
I want to thank everyone for the report. You know, this issue is dear near my heart as a EL learner myself. I mean, like a lot of people mentioned, we were taken back and was shocked. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, it's something, you know, that when we talked about starting the EL department and the work that was going to go in, we knew that we had to, that there was improvements that needed to be done. I'm glad, and I'm glad of the transparency of this board, the work that we've been doing, and so even though it's jaw dropping, it means that we're going in the right place, that we know where we're at, exactly where we're at, and with the work that everyone has been doing, that we're going, that the only way that we're going is up, right? So you know, and in that work, everyone around here is going to be key. So it's a work that I'm motivated into pursuing, and I have no doubt that with the folks around the room that there would be improvement this year, a year from now, because I'm invested and I see a lot around the table invested as well. So I appreciate that, the transparency and showing folks that we are who we are where we're at, but we're also where we're going. So thanks.
Trustee Brown?
Don't know that I have anything new to add, but I do want to recognize and appreciate the work that went into not only identifying but sharing with the board the findings. And I feel the passion that is not only here at the dais with those of us that have to make decisions about how money gets spent and how programs are put into place, but also that we feel that same passion from our public in supporting us in doing what's right for every one of our kids. And I feel that passion at every level of the district, and I have confidence that we will see numbers rise. We've been told for way too long that we're underperforming in not only English language learning, but also in math. And all of our kids need every opportunity that we can provide them to be the best that they possibly can. These findings aren't the only way. As we correct these findings, that's not the only way that we're going to lift students and help them learn. But we have so many other things that are moving in the right direction. I think this is a message of positivity tonight, not just a negative focus on a few findings that we need to correct. I'm excited to hear the progress as we overcome these challenges that have been identified. Because everything that we do is going to benefit our kids. So thank you in advance for all the extra hard work that's going to happen to allow us to have those good reports as they come forward.
Trustee Urban.
Yes, I also like to say thank you of the report and the transparency as well. I know it was very hard to swallow. I know myself as well. But we also had to look at when we hired the new superintendent, she already saw the red flags coming in the door. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, you know, the work had already begun prior to this report and these findings coming out. I mean, we could say we can use it as we were ahead of the game or we were playing catch up. But nonetheless, we began the process of identifying that our ELs, who are some of our most vulnerable students in our district in terms of having to make that transition from one language to another to be able to stay on top of their academic progress. So I'd like to look at, even though it's jaw-dropping, that I also can say, hey, we were, the superintendent we brought on board, Dr. Noguchi, had already, in our interview, identified some things. And then when she got here, began the process of establishing the foundation with the reorg, the new staff, the expertise she brought to the district as well, to begin to start addressing these even before it came out in the report. The report just let us know what probably many of us already knew, but just hadn't come to light, so to speak. But now the transparency let us all know, including the community. So the community has an opportunity as well to provide their input and their knowledge and help us deal with this as a collective versus us and them. We come together to be able to put this information in a way that our students will eventually benefit over the long run. And so this report and the findings, helped me gain a better understanding. And like I said, all my 15 years in the district, I've never seen none of that as well, or heard of it. And so here we are with the findings, and all we can do, as Trustee Lopez says, is go up. Go up from here. At least we have something to go up from. And so appreciate the community coming and not kicking us when we're down, and say, hey, these findings, we've been transparent upon, and that's usually sometimes the first inkling of folks to do is to kick you when you're down, when the minute you let you know you're vulnerable. Yeah, we were vulnerable, but here we are right now ready to do something about it. So I really appreciate that from the community as well, to stand tall with us and help us through this. Thank you.
Yes, it reminds me of maybe 15 years ago, maybe a little further back, but when we were one of the first districts in the state to acknowledge our demographics of our expulsions and suspensions. And when we did that, I was at a meeting I didn't know that it was unusual that we were doing that. I was at a meeting in Sacramento with the state superintendent of public instruction with about maybe 200 other board members. And I remember he asked us to raise our hand if we had released the demographics of our students with expulsions and suspension rates. And I raised my hand, and I was the only one in the entire room that raised my hand. And I recognized that the superintendent at that time was willing to say, this is not something that is a super positive thing, but it's the only way we can have a discussion is if it's made public, and then we need the community's support in helping us resolve that. And that started the discussion, and that's how I look at this tonight, is that as we look at this, these findings, that now we can have a discussion together and say, how can we work together to solve this? How can we move forward with one another? And as you said, Mr. Irvin, you know, don't kick us while we're down, but as we get up and walk forward, you know, what can we do together to make this helpful for our students, as has been discussed already, but it really is about our students and how we can help them succeed. So I just appreciate the comments and the transparency. That word's been used a lot tonight, but that's really what this is. It's being transparent with things that are not always a great thing, but I mean, we did have one really good thing in this report, but just acknowledging it. So I appreciate that. And now I want to ask the board what you would like to do. We have one more item on our agenda. I usually call a break around 7:30, but if you'd like to keep going, that's fine. Okay, I just wanted to ask you what you'd like to do. Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you so much. This is a report. Thank you, staff. You did a wonderful job sharing all those different points on that. Moving on to item B4, report on administrative salary schedule adjustment proposal. Dr. Noguchi.
Thank you. And really what we've been talking about tonight is we're talking about the system. Modesto City Schools is a very large system made up of multiple departments and divisions and structures. Thank you. And tonight what I'm going to be talking about is really creating a system that is more efficient and effective. Not only is it the system, but it's also the time at which we can change the system. I'm hearing tonight about the need for changing the work around EL. Well, we've started that. We've embarked on it about a year ago. We're continuing to embark on it. We're going to be down this journey for the next 5 years. Part of the work in our structure is some misalignment with multiple different departments within our organization. Before I go down this road, and there's 7 or 8 slides, it shouldn't take me too long. I do have to acknowledge that it takes time to create an efficient and effective system. So tonight I'm going to be talking about site administrators. And there's a lot of other areas that I also need to be working on, but we're starting with this one. That doesn't mean that this one's more important than any other ones. It just means for the timing right now, we need to work on this portion of our system because we're now going into the time at which we start hiring for principals and vice principals for next year. And I'll talk about the need for this. So I do want to preface this with, it's not that the site administrators is any more important than anyone else out there. They're not. No one's any more important than any other position in this school district, and I've certainly shared my stories about the importance of all positions. So with that, I will see if this works. Yes, I think I'm pointing it the wrong way, right? All right. Purpose of the presentation, I am going to ask Mr. Zerley to chime in and Mr. Henderson at times because I've thought quite a bit about, the 5 or 7 slides that we have in front of you. So if for some reason they hear something that I haven't said or would like to give their insight, then I welcome them to add anything that they can to provide clarity for you all on why we're doing this, because initially on the onset, this just doesn't seem right. But by the end of this presentation, hopefully it will make some sense. So the purpose of the presentation is really outline the purpose for our recommendations, explain why the changes are needed. I want to be able to share the findings from school services. We did a compensation study that we commissioned out this last August. I'm going to talk about the total cost, and then one add-on, I'm looking at proposing changing one of the senior director positions. So with that, the purpose of the recommendations. Purpose of the recommendation is to ensure that Modesto City Schools is able to meet their goal 5, which is recruit, hire, and retain high-quality staff. We need to create a salary structure that brings Modesto City site administrators to the middle of similar school structures. What you will hear later on today in this presentation is that the site administrators are at the bottom of similar schools, and as a result, it is very difficult to attract administrators. So I'm going to go back to the timing. Right now, we're looking to hire principals and vice principals. We should have 15, 20, 25 applications, and we have 3 or 5. We're lucky to have 8. We don't have 8. That's a dream, right? We need to be in a position, if we truly are going to become a destination school district, that means that our kids are thriving, our staff is thriving, and people are clamoring to get into our school district. They're not right now, and we're starting here with site administration because it's, quite frankly, it's the hiring season. Last year, it was abundantly clear that we needed to make a change with the total compensation during the hiring processes. For the vice principal and senior directors and even the associate superintendent, we had few candidates emerge from those processes. So as a result, at the end of July, I commissioned a study with School Services of California to take a look at comparative school districts, to look to see how we measured up. The study outlined great disparities between the administrators in Modesto City schools compared to similar districts. The districts that we used, while Ceres is not necessarily a similar school district, because we looked at 25 to 30 ADA, Ceres is our competitor. They are in a position, because where we are in the county, for them to be our competition, if you will. So the districts that we took a look at was Ceres, Lodi, Manteca, obviously Modesto City, Sacramento, San Juan, Stockton, Turlock, Twin Rivers, Visalia, and West Contra Costa. So this was the findings. So for a vice principal K-6, out of those school districts, we ranked 10 of 11. That means there was one district that salary schedule was lower than we were. So there was a single. For an assistant principal of 7-8, again, there was one school district that paid less than us. Assistant superintendent 9-12, we were paid the lowest. Assistant principal alternative ed, we were 4 out of 5. I want to bring your attention to the 1 of 1, because this has been a topic of conversation amongst many folks within the school district, because I have to say this has been a tough conversation and a tough topic for administrators as we've began this conversation a couple weeks ago. Where you see associate principal of curriculum instruction is 1 out of 1. That means there's no other district within those comparable districts that even had this position. The vision for this position, as I've shared with you earlier, is to flatten out our assistant principals at the high school and the junior high, so we have one position. So we are cross-training all of our assistant principals ultimately to be principals. So if there are 3 principals or 3 vice principals at a high school, each of those vice principals will have an opportunity to learn instructional leadership, to learn how to work with parents in special ed, to work with discipline. At the end of 2 or 3 years, they have the training and the qualifications to potentially be a candidate for our principals. Right now, we really are only taking our curriculum and instruction person, which really limits our pool. So not only are we looking to change the salary structure, we're also looking to change the structure of our vice principals, and I am confident in another 2 or 3 years that we're going to see some great gains from that. And the rest, you can see we were 9 out of 10, principal K-6, principal 7-8, alternative ed, and then principal 9-12. I'm going to skip that because it was pretty redundant. So I made a change here, and for those of you out in the audience, there is a change that has been made since it was posted, and I shared this. It was shared to me this afternoon at about 2 o'clock that there was an error that was made. So I'm going to walk you through what that error is, and you'll see that any changes that I made is in red, and anything that I took out, I didn't take it out. I just made a line. So if you take a look at the middle of that slide, it says current proposal on the table for all, it used to say managers, and it actually is all site managers. So the cost for health and welfare for site managers, we're looking to increase site managers $3,500 for each. And the total cost for a 1% increase for their salary is $125,000 as compared to $267, because that was for all managers. So I made that change. So overarching, as you look at those numbers, what's the grand scheme? We're looking at total compensation. So total compensation includes salary and benefits, which you all know we are struggling with, and we have a committee, our Health and Welfare Committee, that is meeting and will be reporting back to the board this month on their recommendations and findings. So we know that we've got a misalignment with the health and welfare in compared to the other school districts. I'm trying to think where I was going with that. So that was the one that was added with the health and welfare. So at the very end, the total cost adjustment for all of our site administrators, principals, vice principals, the total cost is $267, recognizing that's adding in health and welfare an additional 1% raise for this year. So I'm going to ask Mr. Zerley and Mr. Henderson if there was something that I missed, because we've spoken about this presentation a couple different times, so I just want to make sure that we have all perspectives.
Yeah, I would just like to apologize on behalf of the superintendent for the error, the misreporting. As Dr. Noguchi pointed out, the figure that you saw there, the 1%, was for all management, and so we clarified it for just the site management, which is the $125,869. So apologize for that. Other than that, Dr. Noguchi did a great job of explaining where the numbers came from and the impact of it. So the total cost of this for the site administration, above what would be proposed for a health and welfare increase and a 1% increase, is $267,000 for this group of site managers.
And that's a good segue just to define the group a little bit. We're negotiating with MTA right now. We hope to be doing so with CSEA soon. And although the MCS managers are not a union per se that we negotiate with in the same fashion, we do consult and engage with them on any compensation agreements. But this proposal is to address a compensation adjustment for a specific subset of managers. So I'm going to give some perspective of that. About 87 of our 216 managers, roughly 41%, were included in the review, with slightly less than that, 78 or so, being impacted in terms of an increase in the compensation of the 1%. In general, in terms of health and welfare, we do have about half of total management taking part in the health and welfare benefits. But just to give some perspective, other than that, I think the rationale behind it and how it breaks down, Dr. Noguchi covered quite well.
We just spoke about a lot of work that we need to do. In order to be able to do this work, we need strong leaders. So we can do one of two things. We either grow our leaders, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. We grow from within, which is really ideal. We want to be able to keep leadership within Modesto City, but we also have to attract. And at this point, we're not attracting folks. So this, I believe, will help attract more. And then the next proposal that I have here is also going to help us with building from within. I'm proposing a change to one of the senior directors of school leadership, really to build in the longevity incentive. Last year, something that was interesting to me is that I approached a couple site principals in coming down to the district office and putting their hats in either to a senior director position or even associate superintendent position, and they said, why would I do that? There's not an incentive to do that because our structure is very flat. So what I'm recommending is, one, take one of the senior directors of school leadership and make it an assistant superintendent. This particular position is very similar to what we have now, because I don't want to change the supervision of the current school structure for next year. But what I would like for this particular assistant superintendent to focus on is building the bench, providing a strong program for building our teacher leaders, to then move into vice principals. So working with principals to identify those teachers that have strong leadership skills and want to be able to work towards an administrative credential. then take the vice principals that we have, work with them, provide a course of different courses and different workshops to develop their skills as assistant principals to ultimately get the skill set they need to be able to be very strong leaders at the principal realm. And then lastly, we've got an excellent principal staff, and many of those principals want to be able to work on their leadership skills. So building in a mentoring program for our current principals to loop back to the principals and vice principals that we are going to be hiring this year, so we can then work to build the capacity of everyone. So I believe that with the structure for the changing of the salaries, and then also moving in a longevity for one of the senior director positions, I do believe we'll be in a better spot to be able to build the leadership we need to be able to take us to the next level. So next steps is really requesting board approval for next board meeting, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from board members? Seeing none, out to the public for comment.
Debbie Martinez, advocate for justice, along with the We Are La Raza Parents Union. First of all, Dr. Noguchi, I want to thank you. I truly do. You have done some tremendous turnaround efforts in this district that the community and parents have been asking for. Your efforts are noted. When I walked in this building, it was so welcoming. Before it was cold. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that from now. As far as principals are good. I see a few of them on the board that have graduated here. But when we get to the principals over at the sites as a parent advocate, it derails. So the only thing I have right now is a comment. You indicated, Dr. Noguchi, that Ceres is your competitive district. Ceres works well with the community and our organization, We Are La Raza. On Wednesday, I have been invited to speak to some students that are getting ready to graduate from Stan State and how important it is for advocacy from the parents to have. The districts have their attorneys, the school sites have their unions, us parents have who? And then we get this jaw-dropping reports when stakeholders as myself come before these governing boards saying, foul play, foul play, foul play. Let's start at ground level. Let's work with Dr. Noguchi in building principals that can one day sit in cabinets as these gentlemen do. Dr. Brad DeGo, Mr. Rich, all of you, I've seen you all graduate from the ground. Dr. Noguchi now has you sitting as part of her cabinet. I'm proud of all of you. Let's keep going. But let's not forget the sites where we have to drop off our parents. So on Wednesday at 4:30 in the Ceres board, I will be speaking for 2 hours on how important parent advocacy is in working with governing boards, districts, and school sites. Thank you.
All right, back to the board. Any other comments? Oh, Trustee Brown.
As long as I can remember, Modesto City Schools has been a great training ground for the surrounding districts for their leadership. And I'm happy to see that we no longer have to say goodbye to our well-trained teachers and administrators as they go elsewhere for higher salaries. And so I'm very supportive of this move, and I appreciate the fact that the research has been made or been covered so that we can see that these changes are justified and very much needed. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, this is a report, and then the next meeting we'll be voting on this. So thank you for the thorough report this meeting for us to have the discussion. Are there any other items for future board meetings that any board members wish to suggest? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Been moved by Trustee Newman, seconded by Trustee Brown. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I
Meeting
think we
ad-
need to look at what time it is.
Meeting adjourned at 8:05. That's
Amazing.
awesome. Thank you.
You guys deserve it with all the times that you spent.